Hey everyone, and welcome to a brand new video. Tonight we have 2 hours of horror stories as per usual. I hope you all enjoy it. If you do, please be sure to drop a like rating. Let's see if we can reach 2 likes on this one. On the video previous to this one, I asked for 1,200 likes. We had already hit 1,000 within the first 7,000 views, which is so wild. I felt like I needed to say thank you for that. That's like 1 in every 7 people liking the video. So, again, thank you. Subscribing if you are new is also very much appreciated. I do post content just like this all of the time with no mid-roll ads. We are also less than 100 subscribers away from 132,000. I feel like I'm talking about numbers too much in this intro. Anyways, sit back, do whatever it is that you do to relax, enjoy the 2 hours of horror stories with no mid-roll ads right after the ad break after this intro. There won't be any more ad breaks after that one. And as always, I hope you all have a great night. I'm making this post because I can't sleep, or eat, or do anything in my day-to-day life anymore. I have tremors in my hands, a constant taste of pennies in the back of my throat, and a scar on my ribcage that opens when I press it. I'm writing it down because the second I stop thinking about it, it forces me to remember it with everything I do. I got the job because I needed the money. That's it. I was broke, my lease was up, and I couldn't keep digging through my couch for loose change to try and eat every day. My cousin knew a guy who managed a place called Hollow Willow Outreach. It sounded like a church, but with better branding. They did community support, such as food drives, counseling, and addiction recovery. A place for people who didn't have anyone or anything. They had a nice building, clean carpets, free coffee, and the kind of calm faces that make you lower your voice without thinking. I showed up in a button-up that didn't quite fit right, and tried to act like I wasn't desperate for a couple bucks. A young woman at the front desk smiled at me too hard. It felt practiced. "Are you here for the intake?" she asked, like this was a normal way to say, "New hire, I'm here for the interview," I said. She tilted her head. "Ah, the helping intake." I met the director, Elliot Rusk. He was maybe 40-ish. One of those men who keep their hair perfect and their voice so soft you can't put an age on them. He wore a plain sweater and a copper wedding band that was definitely too small for him, almost like it was meant for someone else's finger. He shook my hand with both of his. "You have very kind eyes," he said. No one has ever told me that. I laughed awkwardly. I'm good with people." I gulped. He studied my face like he was reading it. The whole time his smile didn't change. Warm, simple, like a painting. "We don't pay much," he said. "But we do feed you. We keep you. We help you become whole." This is where I definitely should have known something was up, and I should have left, but the building was warm and coffee was free, and Elliot looked at me like he was proud of me for just existing. I started the next Monday. My first week was incredibly boring. I answered phones, stocked shelves, and drove donation boxes to storage. The people who came in were exactly what you'd expect. Tired, empty, and twitchy. Some were kind, some were mean in that way people get when they're hungry for something that isn't food. The staff were too nice. They didn't gossip, they didn't complain, they didn't swear. They laughed quietly, like loud joy was disrespectful. They all wore the same little pin on their shirts, a circle with a stake through it. I asked one guy, Matt, what it meant. He touched it with his fingertip like it was fragile. "Correction," he said. "It helps you remember who we're supposed to be." "Like spiritually?" He smiled. "Like biologically." He said it like a joke, but his eyes didn't move. At the end of my first week, Elliot asked me to stay late. The building emptied out, lights dimmed. The hum of the vending machine was corrupting the silence. Elliot led me down a hallway I hadn't been down yet. We passed offices, past a locker door with a keypad, past a wall of framed photos of smiling people holding those pins. The air changed the farther we went, colder and more humid, like the inside of a refrigerator. He stopped at another keypadded door. Staff only, the sign above read. Your staff, he said, still smiling. He punched in a code without looking at the pad. The door clicked open. The hallway beyond was unfinished concrete and bare drywall. The smell hit me like a train, bleach and iron, like pennies and pool water. Somewhere far down the corridor, something dripped slowly. Drip, drip, drip. I stopped walking. What is this place? I asked. Elliot turned, with that smile. This is where we do the work that can't be done in the sunlight. My mouth became dry and I managed to choke up a chuckle. Okay, is this like AA stuff? Group therapy? He looked genuinely confused, almost like I was speaking another language. No, he said softly. This is where we help you become whole. He put his hand on my shoulder and gripped tight, then guided me forward. We reached a room that looked like a hospital room, if a hospital room was designed by someone who'd only seen one in a nightmare. There were clean stainless steel tables, cabinets with glass doors, a rolling cart with instruments laid out neatly, scalpels, clamps, sutures, needles far too long to be used on anything human, and in the center, bolted to the floor, was a chair. Not a dentist chair, not a recliner. A heavy-duty, industrial chair with arm restraints and foot straps, like it belonged in an old loony bin. The leather was dark, cracked, and stained all over. My mouth became dry again. Is this some kind of sick prank? I said. My own voice sounded so far away. Elliot's hand stayed on my shoulder. His fingers were ice cold. We don't prank, silly, he said. We correct God's mistakes. He walked to one of the cabinets and opened it. Inside there were many jars. Not like mason jars with pickles. Thick glass jars with metal clamps, filled with yellow fluid. Chunky items floated in them like pale fruit. I saw what looked like a swollen finger, a slab of skin with black hair still on it, and a jar full of what looked like ears. My vision narrowed. I could hear my heartbeat like a war drum trying to thump its way out of my chest. Elliot? I said shakily, and I hated how small my voice was. What the hell is this? He closed the cabinet so softly it didn't make a click sound, like he didn't want to upset the jars. You've been living, he said, with gaps. What? He stepped closer. Everyone has gaps. We are all born misaligned. You can feel it, can't you? That feeling like something inside you is missing? That you're walking around every day with a cavity that can't be filled? I didn't answer. Because the sick part is, he wasn't wrong. I've had that feeling my whole life, like there's a hole inside me. Elliot smiled wider, and for the first time it looked strained. We fill the gaps, he said. We make people whole. He pointed to the chair. Sit. I couldn't move. His voice didn't change. Still soft, still kind. Sit, he repeated, and something in the air seemed to lean toward me, like the room itself was listening. I'm getting out of here, I said, even though my legs didn't move. Elliot sighed, like I disappointed him. I was really hoping you wouldn't fight, he said. You have very kind eyes. People with kind eyes make the best vessels. They don't hold on so tight. Vessels? I echoed because my brain was latching onto words. He nodded excitedly. For the correction. The next part is embarrassing. I don't like admitting it. I didn't get tackled. No one jumped out from behind a curtain and grabbed me. Elliot didn't start waving a gun around. He just looked at me and said, You're safe here. And my body started to work against me. like I was put into some kind of trance with those 3 words. I sat in the chair. I hate myself for it. I still do. The restraints clicked shut. One of the staff members came in. A woman, maybe 30. Hair pulled tight, same pin on her shirt. She didn't speak. She checked my wrists and ankles like she was tucking a child into bed. "Wait," I said, trying to lift my arms. But they were already locked so tight, any movement felt like the restraints would cut into me. Elliot leaned in close. His breath smelled like mint. "Don't be afraid." He giggled. "Fear makes the seam rough." "What seam?" The woman took a syringe from the cart. It had to have been the thickest needle. It looked like it belonged in an animal tranquilizer kit. I tried to jerk away, but the chair held tight. The more I pulled and moved, the more the metal restraints bit and cut. "Stop," I cried. "Stop, I didn't sign up for this. I'm calling the police, and when they get here, they will wipe that grin off of your face." Elliot stared into my soul with those dark green eyes and crazed smile. "Your phone is upstairs," he said calmly. The needle went into my arm. The cold flooded my veins. Not like numbing, like winter lake water. My fingers tingled, then went heavy. My tongue felt too big in my mouth. The room blurred at the edges, but the center stayed sharp. Too sharp. I could see every crack on Elliot's lips, every tiny scratch on the metal straps, and every speck of dust that floated into the light. I tried to scream, and all that came out was a wet moan. "Good," Elliot murmured. "You're still present. That's important." He pulled on gloves. The woman wheeled the cart closer. Metal clinked. Elliot picked up a tool, not a scalpel. Something shaped like a thin, curved hook with a handle, like a crochet needle from hell. "Where are you?" I tried again, but my words slurred. Elliot pressed his cold, long fingers against my sternum, right in the center of my chest, and I felt something in me respond. Not pain, not yet. More like pressure, like something inside recognized his touch. "Here," he said softly. "Your gap is here. I can feel it. A little hollow, a little gap. That means only a little correction." My heartbeat sped up so fast it felt like I was trying to leap up my throat and into my lap. He placed the hook against my skin. I expected a cut. I expected a sting. Instead, the hook sank into me like I was made of warm wax. I couldn't process it. My brain rejected it. The hook slid into my chest without any resistance, and I felt it inside me, rummaging around gently like a finger stirring soup. A sound came out of me that I didn't recognize as mine. A small, animalistic noise. Elliot's eyes closed, like he was listening to music. "There you are, silly," he giggled. "Do you feel it? God's mistake?" The hook rotated and caught onto something inside me. He tugged. My body responded not with blood but with movement. My chest skin bulged outward in a line, like something beneath it was being pulled toward the surface. It looked like a zipper being drawn from the inside. I could feel it, a tearing sensation, but not like ripping flesh, like separating two things that had been stuck together like old Velcro. Elliot continued to yank and pull. My sternum split. It didn't crack or snap. It was one straight line from the base of my throat down to my stomach. A seam appeared and parted. My skin peeled back in two neat flaps, revealing not organs, not ribs, but something else entirely. A cavity, a smooth, glistening interior, pale pink, lined with fine, vibrating hairs like the inside of a dog's ear. It pulsed. It breathed. It was waiting. I tried to throw up, but my stomach was strapped in. My mouth filled with saliva, and I swallowed it in with panicked gulps. Elliot smiled like a proud father. "See? he said. You were made with mistakes. The woman opened a cabinet behind him. I heard glasses clink and liquid slosh. She returned holding a jar. Inside floated something that looked like a thick knot of pale tissue, fibrous and threaded with veins. It wasn't an organ, I recognized. It was too symmetrical, like it had been grown in a lab. Little pores dotted its surface, and each one pulsed erratically, like it was excited. Elliot took the jar with reverence. This, he said, is what will correct you. Correct the mistakes that God has bestowed upon you. He opened it. The smell punched my nostrils. It smelled like sweet rot and antiseptic, like flowers left in a hospital room too long. He reached in with his gloved hand and lifted that thing out. It dripped yellow, viscous fluid down his wrist. The pores quivered, reacting to the air, to the light, and to me. I started to sob, silently, because my body couldn't make any more sound. Please, I begged through my breath. Please don't. Elliot looked genuinely sad. Oh, he whispered. You think this is harmful? He leaned in, holding the thing above my open chest. This is your correction, he said. This is our love. This is being made whole. He lowered it into my cavity. The moment it touched me, my entire body arched against the restraints, cutting into my wrists even deeper. Warm crimson red dripped off the arms of the chair. Drip, drip, drip. Pain exploded through my nerves. Not sharp, not burning, but invasive. Like 1,000 tiny fingers pushing into places they didn't belong. The furs latched onto inside me, and I felt them connect. Suck. Fuse. My vision went white. Somewhere far away, a low hum began, like a choir warming up, except it wasn't outside. It was in my bones. Elliot's voice seemed to come from what sounded like underwater. Breathe, he said. Let it settle. I couldn't breathe. My lungs locked. The thing inside me pulsed, and with each pulse, my ribs felt like they were being violently rearranged. Not broken, but shifted like they were being shuffled into a different pattern. I felt a pop beneath my collarbone, then another, then the wet, soft, warm sensation of something growing where it shouldn't. My throat made a choking sound and something warm ran down my chin. Blood, dark and thick. The hum grew louder, and I realized it had words. Not words I understood. Words that sounded like someone trying to speak through water and teeth at the same time. Elliot stepped back, hands lifted, eyes shining. Yes, he breathed. Yes, you hear it. I heard it. I hated that I heard it, because underneath the pain, underneath the terror, there was a sensation like relief, like a pressure you didn't realize you were carrying, finally being let out, like scratching an itch you've had since birth. The thing inside me pulsed again, and this time my body responded automatically. My mouth opened, and I spoke. Not English, not anything I'd ever learned. A wet, layered sound came out of my throat, like two voices stacked on top of each other. I felt it vibrate in my teeth, in my sinuses, in the seam of my chest. Elliot's face went slack with joy, like he'd been waiting years for that very sound. The woman beside him bowed her head. Elliot whispered, "Welcome." I blacked out. When I woke up, my shirt was back on. My chest wasn't open, but there was a scar. Not a normal scar. Thin and pale, perfectly straight down the center of my torso like someone had stitched me shut with invisible thread. I was in one of the upstairs counseling rooms on a couch with a blanket tucked around me, like I had just come down with a cold. A cup of water was on the table. Elliot sat across from me with his hands folded. I shot upright so fast my vision swam. "What did you do?" I said, and my voice was hoarse, scratchy, like I'd been screaming for hours. Elliot's expression was gentle, almost amused. "We helped you," he said. "You did beautifully." I clutched my shirt and yanked it up. The scar stared back at me. My skin around it looked stretched, slightly raised, like there was something underneath pressing outward. I pressed my fingers on it. It pushed back. Not like swelling, like something breathing. I scrambled off the couch, stumbling toward the door. It was unlocked. Of course it was. They didn't need locks. I clumsily ran through the building, out into the cold air, half expecting someone to tackle me, to drag me back downstairs. No one followed. The streets outside were normal. Cars passed. A man walked his basset hound. The sky was an ugly winter gray. I almost cried from how normal it all was. I got in my car and drove. I don't even remember where. I just drove until my hands cramped from gripping the wheel so long. That night, I tried to convince myself it was a nightmare. I took a shower so hot my skin turned red. I scrubbed my chest until it stung. I stood in front of the mirror and told myself scars don't breathe. Then I heard it, a faint hum, deep in my rib cage, like a lullaby. I pressed my palm to my chest and felt it vibrate under my skin, and something inside me shifted, like it was getting comfortable. I didn't go to the hospital. How do I tell anyone this? Hi, I think a non-profit organization opened my body like a jacket and put a new organ in me that sings. They'd sedate me, strap me down, cut me open, and if they found anything, if they touched it, I don't know what it would do. So I did what people do when they're afraid. I pretended it wasn't real. I went back to work. I told myself I'd go to the police. I told myself I'd record it, gather evidence, burn the place down if I had to. I walked into Hollow Willow Outreach the next day with a knot of dread hanging in my stomach. The woman at the front desk smiled. "Feeling better?" she asked. I froze. "How did you?" She tilted her head like before. "Your seam is cleaner today," she said, and went back to typing. I backed away and nearly ran into Matt. He looked at me with bright, shining eyes. "You heard it," he whispered through his smile. I swallowed hard. "What is it?" He touched his own pin. "Correction," he said again. "Now you understand how you're supposed to be." I tried to quit that day. I tried to tell Elliot I was leaving. He listened patiently in his office like a therapist. When I finally ran out of words, he smiled wider. "You can go," he said. Relief hit me so hard my knees went weak. Then he added calmly, "But you'll come back." I stared at him. "I won't." Elliot leaned forward. "You will," he said, still soft. "Because the gap is corrected now, and it doesn't like being alone." I laughed, sharp and desperate. "You've lost your mind." Elliot's eyes flicked briefly to my chest. "You haven't slept," he said. "You've been hearing it, and soon you'll start to taste it." My mouth filled with a penny taste. Offering proof, he sat back. "We don't trap people," he said. "We correct them. The world does the trapping. We just open the seam." I left. I didn't come back. For 2 weeks I tried to live normal. I went to work at a different job. I ate. I watched TV. I texted friends. I laughed at jokes and pretended my laughter didn't have a second echo underneath it. At night, the humming got louder. It started to have rhythms, patterns. It began to sync with my breathing, like it was training me. Sometimes, right as I drifted off, I'd feel it push against my ribs, and I would jolt awake, gasping, with my hands gripping at my chest like I was trying to hold myself closed. Then came the dreams. Always the same hallway of concrete. The chair, the instruments, and a door at the end of the hall I hadn't noticed before. In my dream, I always walked toward it. I always reached for the handle, and right before I could touch it, I'd wake up with my chest itching so badly I'd scratch until my nails broke skin. One night, I woke up with blood and fragments of skin under my fingernails, and a thin line down my sternum that hadn't been there when I fell asleep. Not a cut. A seam. Barely visible at first. Like my skin had been pressed together and was starting to come apart. I stumbled to the bathroom mirror and pulled my shirt up with shaking hands. The scar was there, but now it looked active. The skin around it puckered the lips. I touched it, and it quivered under my finger. The hum rose in response like it was pleased, almost like a purring cat. I gagged. I splashed water on my face and I tried to breathe, and then I heard something else. A sound from my own chest that wasn't humming. A quiet, wet click, like something unlatching. The seam twitched, and for a second, only a second, it opened a hair's width. I felt cold air touch something inside me that had never felt air before. My knees slammed onto the tile. I sat there, hunched over, holding myself like I was trying to keep my insides from falling out. I understood, very clearly, that this was not a scar. This was a door. After that, it got worse fast. Food started tasting wrong. Anything with meat made my stomach twist in knots. I started craving things that weren't food. Salty, metallic, sharp. Once, while doing dishes, I stared at a box of razor blades under the sink for so long I forgot what I was doing. The hum would change when I was near certain people. It would be quiet around strangers, like it was hiding. It would swell around anyone wearing that stupid little pin, even if they were across a grocery store aisle. The day I saw Matt again, it nearly tore me open. I was walking downtown trying to keep busy, when I heard a voice behind me. "You're fraying." I spun around. Matt stood there like he'd been waiting. He wore his pin. His eyes looked too bright, too awake. I took a step back. "Don't." He held his hands out, palms up. "We're worried," he said. "Elliot says you're suffering." "I'm not." My chest seized. A pressure built behind my sternum, like someone pushing from inside with both fists. I gasped and clutched my shirt. Matt's eyes softened. "It hates being ignored," he said. "It hates being alone." The seam burned. I felt the skin on my chest start to separate, not from an external cut, but from within, like it remembered how easily it could open. I stumbled backward, bumping into a lamppost. People around us didn't notice, or if they did, they looked away too quickly, like their eyes slid off me. Matt stepped closer. "You can fight it," he murmured. "Or you can come back and let us tend to you. The seam can get infected if you force it shut." I made a sound that might have been a laugh, but it broke halfway through into a sob. "I don't want this," I choked. Matt's voice went softer. "No one wants correction," he said. "But once you've been filled, you don't get to go back to being empty." My seam fluttered. I felt it, not like an injury, like a mouth trying to speak, and then right there on the sidewalk, my chest opened. Not fully, just a thin split down the scar line. A wet, gleaming chunk of skin peeked into the outside world. The air hit it, and the humming turned into a thrilled, hungry vibration that made my teeth ache. Matt stared at it with something like reverence. "Oh," he whispered. "It's calling." I slammed my hands over it, pressing hard enough to hurt. I don't know how I got away. I don't remember. I just remember running, Hands clamped to my chest, feeling something inside me pulse against my palm like a heartbeat that wasn't mine. That night, I barricaded the door. I taped my shirt down with duct tape. Like that would help. I sat on my bed with a kitchen knife in my hand, shaking. I told myself if it opened, I'd cut it out. I told myself I'd rip myself apart before I let them have me. Somewhere around 3 a.m., the humming stopped. The silence was worse. I held my breath and listened. A deafening groan erupted from my chest. The seam on my chest began to open. I took my shot. I gripped the knife hard and gritted my teeth before sinking the blade into my own chest. That same feeling like cutting into warm wax. I pressed harder and further, pushing against the parasite. It let out a symphony of screams and cries. My legs went weak and buckled. I didn't care if I cut past the demon that lived in my chest as long as I didn't have to give myself to that thing. I took the blade halfway out so I could punch it with the piercing point on my cold steel savior. Crunch. Snap. A blinding hot pain exploded from within me. In my horror, both of my top ribs were facing outward. Points of blood and mucus-covered bone were sticking out of my skin. We let out a synchronized blood-curdling scream. I jammed the knife back in with what little strength I had left. I felt the blade puncture its rubbery membrane. A geyser of yellow and red fluid sprayed from the seam, tearing the edges as it sprayed my bedroom's carpet. I don't know how long I sat on that bedroom floor with the knife sticking halfway out of me, and covered in that fluid that smelled like antiseptic rot. When I pulled the knife out, the parasite let out a soft whisper, before my seam slowly closed with little wet snaps and pops. Then I heard it, a knock at my door, not loud, not urgent, polite. I didn't move. My whole body went cold. The knife shook in my grip. Another knock. Then a voice through the wood, calm and warm. You didn't kill it. You only wounded it and made it angrier with you. That was a mistake, it said. I didn't respond. The voice continued, like it knew I was there. We brought you something, Elliot said, to soothe you both. I swallowed hard, tasting pennies. The hum started again, faint like it was waking up. My chest scar tingled. Go away, I groaned. Elliot laughed softly. I understand, he said. It feels like you are losing a battle, and you are correct. A pause, then gently. But you were never correct to begin with. The doorknob turned. I'd locked it. I'd chained it. I'd shoved a chair under it. The knob turned anyway. The chain rattled as if someone was lifting it from the outside with careful fingers. My chest seam burned hot, hot as lava. The humming swelled into a choir. This is the part that makes me most feel sick writing all this, is that the thing inside me wasn't afraid. It was excited. The door cracked open. Elliot stepped in like he belonged there, like he was visiting a friend. Behind him were two others in plain sweaters, the woman from downstairs and Matt. They all wore their pins. Elliot held a jar in his hands. Inside was another one of those pale, twitching knots. This is for you, he said. I tried to stand, tried to run, but my legs didn't work right. My body felt heavy, like gravity had doubled. Elliot's gaze dropped to my chest. Ah, he whispered, almost tender. You poor thing. How bad did this bad man hurt you? My hands clung into my shirt. The duct tape had started peeling away on its own, curling like dead skin. The seam beneath it pulsed. Elliot stepped closer. I told you, he said softly, you would come back. I didn't, I whispered. You came here. Elliot smiled. We're not separate, he said. Not anymore. He reached out. The moment his fingers touched my sternum, my chest opened like it wanted him. The seam parted wide, skin folding back neatly. The pale interior glistened, vibrating with hunger. I screamed, but it sounded wrong, layered like something else screamed with me. Elliot leaned in, eyes shining. You see? He whispered. It recognizes family. God, I hate this. Matt stepped forward and lifted his own shirt. He had the same seam, the same scar. He opened it with 2 fingers, casually, like unzipping a jacket. Inside him, I saw it. Not just one knot. Several. A whole cluster of pale, pulsing organs stacked and intertwined, stitched into him like a grotesque bouquet of tumors. Some of them had grown outward, pressing against his ribs so his chest looked subtly reshaped. His skin stretched thin over certain bulges. His hum was louder than mine, more confident. He smiled at me with wet eyes. It hurts at first, he whispered. Then it feels like being loved. Elliot raised the jar. Open wider, he told me gently. My body obeyed. I felt the seam tear wider. I felt the interior hairs vibrate in anticipation. I felt myself make room. My mind screamed no, but my body, my door said yes. Elliot lowered the new beast towards me, and I saw something I hadn't noticed before. The pores on it weren't just twitching. They were shaped like tiny mouths. Little puckered openings that flexed and tasted the air. The thing inside me surged toward them. My chest cavity rippled, like a throat swallowing. Elliot smiled, delighted. Easy, he murmured. Help him. Help your family and take what is rightfully yours. Correction. The moment the new knot touched my interior, it latched. The tiny mouth sealed against the vibrating hairs with wet clicks. Pain flashed, sharp and hot, but underneath it was that horrible relief again, like scratching a lifelong itch until you bleed and you're still wanting more. I felt it connect, and then I felt it spread. Threads shot out from it, thin as hair but strong, burrowing into me. They wrapped around my ribs, around my lungs, around my heart like snakes seeking a rodent. Each thread pulled gently, firmly, rearranging me. I choked, gasping. Elliot watched like a proud artist. Perfect. He laughed hysterically. You're taking them so well. Matt stepped closer, voice shaking with excitement. Do you hear it? He asked. I did, not just humming now. Voices. Many voices. Some in my bones, some in my teeth, some in the seam itself. Whispering in wet, layered syllables. I realized the words weren't random. They were instructions. Directions. A map. Elliot leaned close enough that his breath wet my cheek. You're going to help us, he whispered, because you're correct now. I tried to shake my head, but my neck felt too heavy. Elliot's hand slid down my open seam and rested inside me like he belonged there. Palm pressed against the pulsing knot. He closed his eyes. I can feel it, he murmured. It likes you. It's growing fast. Something under my left rib shifted. A bulge pressed outward, round and firm, like a fist pushing from inside. I screamed again. The bulge moved. It traveled under my skin, sliding upward like a thing crawling beneath a blanket. It reached my collarbone and stopped. Then it pushed. My skin stretched, went white, then split in a thin line as something sharp pressed out. Not bone, not metal. A pale, wet spike emerged, covered in clear mucus, like a tooth growing where no tooth belonged. Elliot opened his eyes and smiled. "A marker," he whispered. "You are becoming visible." Matt stared, tears streaming. "You're so lucky," he breathed. I couldn't breathe. My chest was a living door, my body rearranging itself around a parasite that felt like love if love was a trap. Elliot withdrew his hand and finally, gently, pushed my skin flaps closed. The seam zipped itself shut with a series of wet clicks. The scar sealed, smooth and pale, except now there was a lump under it. Multiple lumps, like knots under fabric. Elliot patted my chest like he was soothing a pet. "You'll feel sore," he said. "Drink water. Avoid sharp objects. Don't pick at your seam. Don't let him hurt you ever again." He stood, straightening his sweater, calm as ever. "We'll see you tomorrow," he said. Then they left, just like that. My door closed, but the hum didn't stop. It never stops now. Here's the part I'm stuck on. The part that makes my hands shake as I type. They didn't need to restrain me anymore, because when they were gone, and I was alone in my room, I sat on the edge of my bed and listened to the choir in my ribs. And my first thought wasn't, how do I get this out? My first thought was, what if they're right? What if I was missing something? What if the horrible relief is the only honest feeling I've had in years? That's when I knew I was in real trouble, because I don't trust myself now. I don't trust the way my body leans towards certain places when I walk past them. I don't trust the way my hands drift to my chest in my sleep. I don't trust the way my mouth waters when I smell blood, even my own. And I don't trust the thing inside me that's learning my routines. 2 days ago, I woke up with my shirt folded neatly on the floor. My scar was exposed, and there were fingerprints around it. Not mine. Small, damp prints, like someone with wet hands had pressed against my sternum and tested the seam. Last night, I found one of those pins on my kitchen counter. I don't remember picking it up. I don't remember going outside, but it was there. A circle with a stake going vertically through it. Correction. I threw it in the trash. I took the trash outside immediately. This morning it was back on my counter. Clean, dry, waiting. So I'm writing this now because I need someone, anyone to know that if you see Hollow Willow Outreach, if you see their food drives or their smiling volunteers or their little pins, you do not go inside. You do not let them touch you. You do not accept their coffee, no matter how good it smells. And if you've ever had that feeling like there's an empty space inside you, like you're walking around with a hole inside you, please, please understand that there are people out there who can fill that gap. And they don't see it as a pain. They see it as an invitation. The last thing Elliot said to me, quiet and warm, like a blessing, keeps replaying in my head. "You'll come back." The worst part is, I don't know if he meant me, or the things that are trying to slither and claw their way out of my chest. My wife Madison and I are serious board gamers. We like the complicated ones best that take 2 to 3 hours to complete. Our good friend Jake is even more of a gamer than we are. He's single and can afford the latest releases, so we often test them at his place. This past weekend, he got a hold of a new board game and texted us, "I bought the coolest one ever. You guys should come over and play it." My wife and I were ecstatic. A night of gaming was just the break we needed. We hired a babysitter, got our house in order, and headed over to Jake's apartment for an evening of fun. After we stepped into Jake's apartment, We were surprised to see a beautiful woman setting up a table in the living room. "Hi everyone," Jake beamed, introducing us to his companion. "This is Liz. She's my new girlfriend." "Your girlfriend?" I asked. "Yeah, she's super into board games." Madison and I made our introductions. Liz seemed nice, but we were struck by her appearance. You see, Jake is what most people would describe as average looking. He rarely took care of his appearance and always wore the same clothes. Liz, in contrast, resembled a glittery influencer. She was clearly out of his league. "Nice to meet you," Liz said and shook my hand. Her skin felt surprisingly cold against mine. "Let's get this thing going." Jake slapped my back and motioned us to our seats. The board game was a mixture of all our favorites. There were elements of the classics, but enough new mechanics to keep things interesting. All throughout the game, I pushed myself, desperate to outdo Jake. "So close," he'd tease, scooping up a handful of resources from the bank. "But not ready to play with the big boys yet." About 30 minutes in, I noticed Liz casting glances at me. They were intense and focused, almost like she was checking me out. I leaned over to my wife and whispered, "You seeing this?" She glanced up from her cards. "What?" "Jake's girlfriend won't stop looking at me." Madison rolled her eyes and nudged my arm. "Sure, honey, you wish." But as the night went on, she began noticing it too. After a few more rounds, Madison began her questioning. "So, Liz, how long have you lived in Northern California?" "Oh, since I was 17, Liz said, playing with her hair. "I left for a few years, but came back." She gave Jake a heart-pounding kiss. "It's been so nice having this stud muffin around." "Stud muffin?" I glanced at my friend. "He's certainly no stud muffin. Maybe she likes his personality or sense of humor." I pushed away my thoughts and continued playing. After a few more rounds, Jake yawned and scooted out of his seat. "Anyone else want some popcorn? I'm starving." "I'll take some," Madison said. "I'll come with you." I got up and followed Jake out of the room. Once we were out of earshot, I pulled him aside. "Dude, what's up with your girlfriend?" "What do you mean?" "She keeps staring at me." Jake did a back and forth over his shoulder. "Okay, I know she's strange, but deep down she's a good person. Only problem is, she has this addiction. I can't keep her off me. She's like draining me every chance she gets." His eyes sparkled. "It's wonderful." "Just tell her to stop staring at me." Okay, I'll ask her to chill out. Relax, man. She's just free-spirited is all." Once the popcorn was ready, I grabbed a bowl and followed Jake back into the living room. I was surprised to see Madison and Liz were gone. No sooner had I set the bowl on the table than the back door opened. Madison and Liz stepped inside. "Oh, hey, honey. Did you want a soda, water, or—" "No, thanks." Madison fixed her collar, like she was hiding something. "Is everything all right?" "Yes." She crept back to the table, then froze mid-step, as if short-circuiting. "Actually, I need to use the restroom. BRB." She hurried out, and I furrowed my brow, confused by her behavior. After what seemed like a good 20 minutes, Madison's voice drifted in from the hall. "Will, can you come here for a second?" "Sure, babe." I got up and followed her voice. As soon as I reached the bathroom door, a pair of cold hands yanked me inside. "Yo, what the—" It was Madison. She was already lunging for my neck, her fingers tearing at my collar. "Babe, what are you—" "I'm sorry, sweetie. I'm just so hungry." "Hungry?" I shoved her off. "What are you talking about?" "You guys ready?" Jake's voice bled in from the living room. "Give me 5 seconds." I faced Madison, trying to ward her off. Seriously, what's going on? I just need one bite. There was a loud banging at the door. Come on, popcorn's getting cold. I'll be right there. I turned and gasped at my wife's expression. Her gaze seemed feral and ravenous, like a mountain lion sizing up its prey. Just one. Screw this. I grabbed the door handle and noticed for the first time a bite mark on her neck. What the... Madison opened her jaws, revealing tiny incisor-like fangs. Please, it'll really help. She leapt toward me and I dove behind her, grabbed a towel and pinned her arms to her side. Straining, I set the towel between her jaws and pulled tight, like I was securing an alligator. Let go of me, her voice hissed. I must have backed into the door and nudged the handle because we were soon stumbling into the hall. Nice of you to join us. Jake's voice groaned from the living room. I turned to see him lying on the table. Liz was hunched over him, feasting on his flesh like a rat devouring raw meat. What? She sat up, wiped the blood from her lips. What is this? What are you? What did you do to my wife? Liz swallowed a pile of gore. All I did was teach her how to be beautiful, like me. I stared at Jake in horror. Disgusting bite marks covered his body. They seemed festered with infections, leaking out blood and pus. He was still alive. Somehow. Give me your flesh. Madison ripped the towel free and reached a hand behind her, almost tearing my left ear off. The hell? I shoved her into the wall and sprinted past Liz, and booked it for the front door. Don't let him escape, is all I heard as I wrenched it open and leapt outside. I managed to hide in the neighbor's bushes. Thankfully, nobody saw me enter. I watched as Madison exited the apartment and wandered along the road calling for me. Liz came out shortly after. I watched them sweep the block and stop at my car, peering in to see if I was hiding there. I could still hear Jake moaning from inside his apartment. It sounded like he was dying. After a few minutes, Liz and Madison gave up searching and returned to his place. It's been quiet for some time now. I know that if I can just book it to the car and call the police, I can make it out of this. I'm going to make a run for it. Wish me luck. I was never good connecting with people. That is why I ended up in this forum. A hole where we go. The ones that hate our office jobs but are too tired to quit. The kind of places where one enters to feel connection with real people while surrounded by gaudiness. That is where I met Jay. There was no magical connection. We were just two boring guys throwing stuff about our jobs in the general chat at 2 a.m. At the start, I thought Jay was a dedicated troll or a roleplay writer very deep in his character. His complaints were weird. He didn't complain about the air conditioning. He complained that the oxygen filters of Sector 4 tasted like rust. He didn't talk about the subway. He spoke of the magnetic capsules that always vibrate too much. I followed the current because it was fun. It was better than working on my spreadsheets. But with time, it stopped being funny. Jay was not inventing anything. He spoke of the Great Blackout of '85 like it was basic history from primary school. His descriptions of what he saw through his window gave me chills. He didn't speak of the gray sky of always. He described a city that looked like a living organism, with buildings of glass and metal growing upwards like mushrooms. Eating the horizon I thought I knew. Jay wrote to me from 2112. And the worst is that our lives were equally pathetic. Until Jay got the job. Core maintenance. Jay was out of himself when they hired him. He told me the city finally was going to wake up, that the arrival of the new biotech systems was going to change everything, and that he would be there in first line. I remember his message. He was euphoric. We don't use silicone anymore. Cabron, it is meat. Processors of neuronal tissue. Living hardware. They have veins. You can feel how they pulse. He felt like a kid with a new toy. Said the machine was going to manage reality. That there would be no more traffic or blackouts because the system predicted the needs before anyone even thought them. Finally, he felt his talent was not going to rot in an office, but that he was building the future. I was happy for him. And then, I got run over. Nothing cinematic. An Uber skipped a stop sign while I was crossing. 3 weeks in the hospital, broken clavicle, and a depression of a horse. I lost my cell phone in the accident, and honestly, when I got out, I didn't have desire to talk to anyone. Not even Jay. I isolated myself. Months passed. I convinced myself Jay was just a crazy guy with too much free time or a role player with much imagination. I forgot the topic. Until 3 hours ago. My phone vibrated. Unknown number, local area code, but with too many digits. It was Jay. The message wasn't a formal letter. It was paragraphs vomited, full of finger errors, written by someone who knows his time is ending. Don't apologize. Don't even try to explain why you disappeared those months. I already know. When I entered the core registry to see what had failed in my life, I saw the tree of causes and effects. I saw your name there, lost between millions of data. I saw the report of your traffic accident, the car model, your clavicle diagnosis, the exact days you would pass unconscious. The system had it registered in its map of certainties since decades ago. The system knew you were going to shut up. It read that pain and trauma would keep you far from the keyboard enough times so my loneliness reached critical point. You are just like everyone else. One more adjustment variable, friend. In the core registry, I saw the simulation. It was a perfect video. I was on the walkway of Sector 7. I saw how my body leaned. I don't know if I slipped on oil or if simply my muscles gave up, but I saw myself falling direct to the main generator. And the sound? God, it wasn't a scream. It was that violent buzz of high tension, a dry crack, and then that electric hiss that vibrates in your teeth. I saw myself cooking in a discharge of 400,000 volts, and the system played it again and again like it was a tutorial. Jay told me he tried to change it. Reported sick, locked in his room. But the system doesn't manufacture the future. It predicts it with cold exactitude. Yesterday arrived a mandatory work order. Priority Alpha. The place? Sector 7. The task? Repair a logic error on the walkway. And attached to the work order came the file of closing of my shift. Cause of leave? Work accident. It wasn't a threat. It was an administrative fact. The system already had processed my death to square the accounts of the quarter. You don't understand. The message followed. It's not that they want to kill me. It is that the system already knew about my imminent death. My absence had already been covered months before it happened. The system needs that failure to activate the renovation protocol of the sector. My death is a logical consequence. I am a statistic sacrifice in a spreadsheet that has no feelings. The worst is that, reading it, I didn't feel rage. I felt it made sense. That my life only served so that algorithm squared its numbers. I write you because you were the only real thing, and because I need from you. I need to avoid this happening. I must try, and you, friend, I think you can help me. They already used you. You already fulfilled your function of absent friend. So now you are a free variable. If you read this, if someone back there knows this is not an accident, maybe it generates a parity error, a bug. They just blocked the door of the room. Only opens if I accept the route to work. My legs move alone. I have fear. I don't want to go. The message cuts there. I tried to call. The number does not exist. I have been shaking for hours, looking through the window, waiting to see something that shouldn't be there. Before I thought the accident was fault of the drunk driver. Now I think it was a mathematical correction. That thing, that mass of synthetic neurons that hasn't even been invented yet, hit me with a car 3 months ago to make sure its repair in 2112 happened without setbacks. Jay is already dead, and hasn't even been born yet. He doesn't exist yet, and his destiny is already determined. And I am here, writing this with one hand because the other still hurts when weather changes. I post this only to fulfill the last will of Jay, to try to be that bug. But being honest, if the system could orchestrate my accident with that millimetric precision, probably it also calculated that I would write this post. Probably calculated that you would read it, and calculated that you would do nothing about it. If anyone is working on neuronal biotechnology, please kill it before it is born. I interviewed him at a diner off the highway because it was close to his office and quiet in the afternoons. He ordered coffee and didn't finish it. I recorded the conversation on my phone and took notes anyway. He had studied the cave for years. He was careful to say studied, not explored. His work focused on mapping passages, logging dives, and reviewing incident reports. He no longer went into the cave himself. I asked why. Risk profile changed, he said. Or maybe I just stopped ignoring it. The cave has a working name in the literature, but he asked me not to use it. He numbered the path 524287, a combination of the mainline number, the station number, and the depth number. I'll call it Falcon's Roost. It's a submerged system in West Texas, fed by a spring and capped by a narrow sinkhole. Entry requires technical cave diving. There is no direct ascent once inside. He described the layout in practical terms. Long penetrations, no large chambers. Silt that stays suspended once disturbed. Navigation that depends entirely on guideline discipline. I asked about depth. Depth matters less than distance, he said. You're committed early. At one point he mentioned that the water temperature was higher than expected, usually high 70s, warmer than most caves in the region. Does that change anything? I asked. A little, he said. People work harder without realizing it, but it's not the main issue. He said the main issue was planning assumptions, models that looked fine on paper, margins that disappeared when multiplied by time and task load. He talked about gas management failures, navigation errors, and missed decision points. None of it sounded dramatic. I asked how many people had died there. He said he didn't keep account. He tracked incidents, not outcomes. What stays consistent, he said, is that everyone thinks they understand the cave after the first successful dive. He showed me notes from the previous surveys, numbers, short comments, equipment serials. One page listed instruments that stopped reporting mid-dive. No conclusions were written next to them. When I asked why he agreed to the interview, he said he was tired of seeing the cave described as mysterious or extreme. It isn't, he said. It's just a system with no margin. That night, when I started writing, I tried to summarize what he had told me. I wrote a sentence, then deleted it. I wrote another and removed that too. Eventually I settled on something accurate enough to keep. I spoke to her over a video call because she lived too far away to meet in person. She said the distance was one of the reasons she never tried to see the cave herself. She worked a regular job, did weekend dives when she could, and followed exploration projects online. She described herself as an enthusiast. She corrected herself and said hobbyist instead. She had heard about the cave years ago through forums and shared maps. She knew the basic outline: submerged, long penetrations, limited exits. She said it was the kind of place people argued about without ever going there. I looked into it, she said. Training, travel, logistics. It was never realistic. She listed the reasons without prompting: the cost, the certifications, the time off work, the fact that the cave was in a part of the country she had never been to and didn't have a reason to visit otherwise. She paused, then added that she followed the dives closely anyway, read reports, watched footage when it was shared. She said she liked understanding systems, even ones she wouldn't enter. I asked how she knew about the fatality. She nodded once, like she had expected the question. A friend of mine went in, she said. Not recently, but that cave. She didn't give her friend's name. She said they had trained together years earlier, recreational at first, then more technical. She stayed at the level she was comfortable with. Her friend didn't. She was better than me, she said, more committed. I asked what she meant by committed. She rearranged her life around diving, she said. I didn't. There was a delay in the audio. She waited for it to catch up. Is that why you're calling? She asked. Because of what happened? I asked her what she had heard. She said she never blamed the cave. She never blamed her friend either. She said there were always explanations, even if they weren't satisfying. I stopped following it closely after that, she said. Still read things, just not the comments. I thanked her for talking with me. She said it was fine. Then she added that she hoped I wasn't trying to turn it into something it wasn't. It's just a place, she said. Most of us only ever know it from a distance. She added one other thing, almost as an aside. Her friend had never been especially strong. Not weak exactly, but careful about her limits. She had been born early and had grown up paying attention to how her body responded to stress. It was something she mentioned occasionally, usually in practical terms. She planned around it, she said. Rest days, conservative margins. I asked if that had changed before the dive. She thought about it. Not openly, she said. She said it wasn't framed as pushing past anything, more like it had stopped being part of the calculation. At the time, she said, that felt like confidence. I met with my editor in her office late in the afternoon. She had the door open and her screen tilted so I could see it from the chair across her desk. She didn't ask how the interviews went. She scrolled as I talked. When I finished, she nodded once. This isn't landing, she said. I asked what she meant. It's accurate, she said, but it doesn't match what people think the story is. She said the coverage so far had set expectations, images, language, a certain tone. What I had was procedural. She said that wasn't a problem on its own, but it didn't explain why anyone should keep reading. There's no hook, she said. No escalation. I said I wanted to talk to more people, not experts. People who had followed the cave over time. People who had opinions without access. She shook her head. That's not where this goes, she said. You'll get the same answers phrased differently. She leaned back. If you want the next step, she said, you talk to the families. I didn't respond right away. The relatives, she continued. the ones closest to what just happened. I said I wasn't sure they would talk to me. "They will," she said. I told her I thought it was too soon. She looked at me for a moment, then back at the screen. "Soon as the window," she said. "After that, it's background." She said the piece needed something current, something no one else had yet. She said otherwise it would read like context without a center. I said I wanted to keep working the way I had been. She said I could, but it would change the outcome. "Go talk to them," she said. "If it doesn't go anywhere, we reassess." I nodded, though I didn't agree. I met him in a coffee shop near the freeway because he suggested it and said parking was easy. He arrived early and had already ordered. He asked before sitting down how this worked. "Are you paying for this?" he said. I told him I could reimburse him for his time. He nodded. "Good, I've got things to do." He said he was the brother. He didn't specify older or younger. He didn't say his brother's name unless I asked. And when he did, he said it quickly, like it wasn't important to repeat. "I never got that stuff," he said. "The cave thing? It was always strange to me." He described his brother as mostly quiet, kept to himself, had a regular job for a while, then another, the kind of person people didn't worry about because nothing ever seemed obviously wrong. "He wasn't dramatic," he said. "Didn't cause trouble." I asked how long his brother had been involved. "A few years," he said. "Long enough that it just became normal." He tapped his phone on the table and checked it when it buzzed. He didn't look upset. He looked distracted. "You're not asking about what happened," he said. I told him I was trying to understand who his brother was. "That's fine," he said, "but that's not what people care about." I asked what he meant. He leaned forward slightly. "You know," he said, "how they found him?" I didn't respond. "They leave that part out, but it's why people are watching." I asked what he wanted me to understand about his brother. He shrugged. "That he chose it." I asked why he thought that. "Because nobody made him go, and now everyone else has to deal with it." When I told him I needed to wrap up, he looked irritated. "So that's it?" he said. I took out my phone and sent him the money we had agreed on. He watched the screen until the confirmation came through. "If you need more," he said, "I can get you details." I told him I planned to speak with other members of the family. "That's fine. They'll tell you different versions." I stood and gathered my notes. As I was about to leave, he added something, like it had just occurred to him. "He was born early. C-section." I turned back. "Our mom didn't survive it. Complications." He said it plainly. "After that," he continued, "people didn't really know what to do with him." He looked down at his phone again. "He was always tied to it, even if nobody said it out loud." I left before he could add anything else. I was in a hotel room off the interstate with the curtains half closed and the lights on even though it was still early. The desk was too small, so I spread everything out on the bed. Notes, transcripts, timestamps, names. I opened my laptop and checked the coverage. Most of it was already published. Short pieces. Updates folded into larger feeds. The language was consistent across outlets, even where the facts weren't. There wasn't much left that felt unclaimed. I wrote a brief email to my editor. I kept it factual. I said the reporting wasn't producing anything unexpected. I said the angles we were considering were already circulating. I said we were behind on timing and the story had settled faster than anticipated. I didn't mention the interviews in detail. I didn't say how long they had taken. I sent it and closed the app. I went back to the notes and tried grouping them differently. By role, by proximity, by tone, the result was the same. Context without momentum. I checked my phone. No response yet. I didn't write it down as a conclusion. I didn't write it down at all. I showed up only when I stopped sorting by role and started sorting by background details. Things people mentioned in passing. Things that didn't seem relevant when they were said. Birth stories came up more often than I expected. Not framed as medical history, just facts that had been repeated long enough to feel ordinary. Premature, emergency delivery, C-section. It wasn't in every interview, but it was in enough of them to register. Always secondary, always offered as context for something else. A reason someone was cautious, or small, or monitored more closely growing up. None of them had been born vaginally. None of them had gone through labor. All of them had arrived early, removed rather than delivered. I checked the names again to make sure I wasn't forcing the pattern. I wasn't. The information was already there. I had just ignored it. There was no way to frame it responsibly, no mechanism I could point to, no expert I could quote without sounding like I was fishing for meaning where there wasn't any. Even if it was true, it would read like speculation. I closed the folder and left that set of notes untouched. I went back to the first interview. He had drawn while we talked, not to explain anything in particular, just filling space in the margins of my notebook. I hadn't paid much attention at the time. It was a rough sketch of the cave system, notes written sideways where he'd run out of room. The main passages narrowed towards one end. At the far edge of the drawing, the lines curved inward, the walls thickened, the opening reduced to a single constriction, wider on one side than the other, then tapering again. He hadn't labeled it. There was no arrow or comment explaining what it had represented. I stared at it. The shape was familiar in a way that had nothing to do with caves. I closed the notebook and put it in my bag. Some patterns don't belong in print. Growing up in Appalachia, I heard all types of stories and scary things that go bump in the night. The old coal man, the headless mule, and Miss Myra from a ways away. You know the stories. As tough little country kids, none of them scared us. At least they ain't scared us half as much as the pitch black dark on a summer's night. That is, none except Meemaw. Papa never told us kids why. He told us not to mention her. Us grandkids thought it was kindly strange because Meemaw was always part of our lives. He must have been married to the woman since God knows when. Meemaw put out our church clothes on Sundays. She made us grandkids breakfast every time we stayed over too, and it was always our favorites. But none of us were allowed to acknowledge her. I remember Cousin Patty one summer morning came running from the crick clear across Papa's front acre saying Meemaw needed help. Patty said she was hurt something awful, and he begged, cried for Papa to help. Now, I remember climbing up over a grassy hill to try to take a look. Sure enough, Meemaw was there, turned over on her side in her black dress, wailing while she clutched her stomach. Papa, she... Papa clasped his wrinkly palm across my mouth so fast it felt like a slap. Shut your mouth now, Mary Sue, and leave it be. He told us as tears welled up in my eyes, grew, and trickled down through the hairs on the back of his hand. Papa was a gentleman, and surely hadn't treated me like that before. My heart was broken. I used Papa's office phone to call my mom. My mama come and got me from Papa that day after I called her, and I tried to tell her what happened. She gave Papa a look that could kill. I remember how ashamed Papa looked. It was a few years later that Papa died. Like most fellas of his time and of that age, his heart gave out one sunshiny morning. His funeral was intense. Us grandbabies, all 10 of us at the time, we sat together in a row on a wooden pew. We cried while folks gave speeches about our Papa, speeches about how good a man he was. We wailed like the dead. To some of my cousins, Papa was the only father figure they rightly had. They'd lost the only good man they'd ever known in the whole lives of theirs, and at such a young age. Their own dad's been lost to shine, the minds, and the type of typical recklessness menfolk tend to get into. Meemaw sat with us, at the end of our row. She was holding baby Christina in her lap. Christina was just 2 years old, and she surely didn't understand what was going on, but she picked up on the sadness somehow, the finality. Baby Christina was just woeful the whole funeral long, crying into Meemaw's bosom. Meemaw never spoke a word. While they put Papa on the ground, they'd left us grandbabies in a little wooden playpen sort of thing that they had in the rec room of the church. Our moms and dads just left us there. The only one didn't leave us was Meemaw. Most of the cousins knew that Papa had taught us never to acknowledge Meemaw. Definitely, we knew never to speak with her. The little ones like Christina didn't know so well. In a corner of the playpen, Meemaw crouched onto her knees, her long, sheer black dress draped over her. Baby Christina sat, looking up at her when I decided I had to do something. "Tina, baby, come here, baby. Cousin Mary misses you." I waved my hands at her, beckoning sweetly to come and play. I reached in my dress pocket and pulled out some kind of knockoff dollar store Barbie I had with me. I shown her the little blonde doll and waved it at her. Baby Christina's eyes lit up with wonder, and she started wobbling her way across the rug to me. Meemaw lifted her head, which was covered in what looked like a wedding veil, only black as coal. Her head angled to me and struck me with a cold sensation of fear like I'd never felt before. "Come play Barbies, Tina." I wagged my doll towards baby Christina once more. "Come on, you can pick her pretty dress, baby." Something inside me told me I had to get baby Christina away from Meemaw in that moment. Baby Christina kept weebling and wobbling to and fro, getting closer. My older cousins Samantha and Jamie joined in. "Come on, baby," we all shouted. We ushered her towards us by gesturing with our hands. It was then that Meemaw stood, only she was much too tall. Her veiled head and neck were so high, they bent forward across the ceiling. She got so close. Baby Christina, that is. She'd had one hand on my knockoff Barbie doll when Meemaw peeled her back. Baby Christina cried something mighty, like nothing I ever heard before or since. Meemaw had her now, clutched in her 2 long arms. Behind Meemaw's veil, her cold white dead eyes bore holes into me and I think into all of my cousins. Meemaw turned with baby Christina tucked under one arm and slid open a window with ease. Meemaw put one leg through and then the other, and within moments she was gone. When the police came, they asked us all sorts of questions about what happened. Us grandbabies tried to tell them about Meemaw taking our baby cousin away. The only thing was, there was no Meemaw. At least there was no Meemaw that any of our parents claimed to know. No one was at Papa's funeral that day that fit her description. It wasn't until a few years ago that my mother admitted to me that she was adopted by Papa. All my aunts and uncles were. They said that Papa never married, at least not that they knew of. They act like they never knew about our Meemaw, or any woman that cared for us grandbabies back at Papa's house. All I know for sure is that some mountain woman took my baby cousin that day. I only wish Papa had been alive to stop her. You ever have a memory you wish you could just burn out of your skull? One of those memories that make you sick to your stomach? One that feels like a dream you can't wake from? I wish it was a dream. I wish I could go back to that weekend when the only thing I was worried about was Rico's cheap combos in Street Fighter. But the air in Detroit is heavy with things that aren't supposed to be there. This is how it started for me. This is what I want to forget. You know that feeling when you're being watched, but the person watching you is a mile away? That was Faircrest at dusk. I was sitting on the floor of my friend Rico's living room. The SNES was humming, the TV screen throwing jagged blue and purple light over the walls. Rico was leaning so far forward he was practically inside the tube, his tongue poking out the corner of his mouth. "You better not hit that cheap move again, Rico," I warned, my thumbs aching from gripping the controller too hard. "You're just mad 'cause you're losing, Ant," he shot back, a wicked grin splitting his face. "I ain't losing. The controller's sticking." "You're going to lose," he cackled. On the screen, Blanca let out a digitized screech and electrocuted my character into a pile of pixels. I groaned, dropping the controller against my chest. Man, that character is broken. Rico didn't even look up. Life's broken, man. Adapt. Behind us, Rico's older sister, Rochelle, was sprawled across the couch. She had a textbook open, but she'd been staring at the same page for 20 minutes. She kicked Rico's shoulder with a socked foot. "You two sound like you're arguing over rent money. Keep it down before Ma hears you." "If it was real money, I'd be a millionaire," I joked, though my heart wasn't really in it. I looked toward the window. Outside, the sun was sinking, smearing a bruised orange light across the abandoned field next door. During the day, it was just a dump. Broken 40-ounce bottles, waist-high weeds, and the empty patches of dirt where the city had ripped out 3 houses years ago. But at night that field looked wider. It looked like it was stretching. The house was sitting right there on the edge of the property line, the one the city missed. It was a rotting, 3-story Victorian that leaned to the left, like it was trying to whisper something to the house next to it. No one lived there. No one even tagged it with graffiti. Even the crackheads stayed clear. "Yo, Aunt," Rico said, snapping me out of it. "You're staying the whole weekend, right?" "Yeah," I said, pulling my eyes away from the dark window. "My mom said it's cool. She said Rochelle is scarier than most dudes anyway. So if your mom does have to leave for something, I'd be safe." Rochelle smirked, her eyes still on her book. Accurate. I've known Rico and Rochelle for what felt like forever. We went to the same school. Our moms were even friends, and they both have the same name, Michelle. The mood was perfect. Simple. The rattle of the box fan, the smell of fried chicken from down the block, and the low-frequency hum of the city. Then, the knock came. It wasn't a normal knock. It was hard, rhythmic, and confident, like whoever was out there was already stepping inside in their mind. Rochelle sighed, moving to the door. "Watch, it's the whole circus." She was right. Kim burst in first, loud and bright, followed by Tyson, who was already heading for the kitchen to see what was in the fridge. And finally Tasha. Tasha was the one who made me uneasy. She didn't walk into a room. She drifted. She stayed near the door, her eyes flicking to the corners of the ceiling before she looked at any of us. "Why y'all house always smell like food?" Kim asked, plopping down next to me and making the couch protest. "Because we eat, Kim. Try it sometime," Rochelle said, closing her book. The room filled with the kind of noise that usually makes you feel safe. Jokes, insults, the sound of Tyson raiding the sausage from the stove. But every time the streetlight outside flickered, the shadows in the hallway seemed to jump just a little too far. "Anybody want to hear something creepy?" Kim asked. her voice dropping an octave. Rico rolled his eyes. Man, y'all always on that ghost stuff. Tyson walked back in, chewing on a piece of sausage link. He leaned against the door frame, his shadow stretching halfway across the floor. Depends. You want the fake stuff, or the stuff that actually happens on this block? I looked at the window again. The abandoned house across the field seemed closer now, like it had moved a few inches while we weren't looking. "What's real creepy, Tyson?" I asked. Tyson didn't smile. He just stared at the dark glass of the window. "You ever hear of the pig lady?" The fan clicked. The TV buzzed. And for the first time that night, the house felt very, very cold. Tyson let the silence sit there, heavy and suffocating, until the only sound was the rhythmic clack, clack, clack of the box fan. "The pig lady," he finally repeated, his voice barely a whisper. "Folks say she lived in the slaughterhouse district back in the 40s. Something went wrong, a fire, or maybe something she did to herself. Now she don't have a face. Not a human one anyway." Rico let out a jagged, nervous laugh. "Man, that's just some urban legend to keep us off the property." "Is it?" Tasha spoke up from her corner. She hadn't moved since she entered. Her eyes were fixed on the reflection in the darkened TV screen. "My grandma says the ground under that field is sour. She says when the city tore those houses down, they did it because the houses were screaming." "All right, enough," Rochelle snapped, though I noticed her fingers were white where she gripped the edge of her textbook. "It's Friday night. We aren't doing this." But the seed was planted. I could feel a low-level hum in the back of my skull. Every time I looked at the window, the reflection of the living room felt wrong. It was like the room in the glass was a second late catching up to our movements. "I bet y'all wouldn't even walk to the porch," Kim teased, her eyes gleaming with that reckless energy she always had. Me and Rico gave each other that look, like we about to run just talking about it. "I ain't scared of no old house," Rico barked, though he didn't move. "Prove it," Kim challenged. "Truth or dare, and I already know what the dare is." "Truth or dare?" Rochelle laughed, but it was a dry, humorless sound. She slammed her textbook shut, the dust motes dancing in the lamplight. "Absolutely not. Every time we play that, someone ends up crying, or the cops end up at the door because Kim dared someone to throw eggs at a patrol car. We're staying inside. We're being civilized." "Civilized is boring, Ro," Tyson groaned, his massive frame shifting in the recliner. He'd finished the sausages and was now eyeing a bowl of stale chips. "Besides, Aunt is staying the whole weekend. Rico just told us. You really gonna make us leave him here just to play Street Fighter until his thumbs bleed?" "Wait, Aunt's staying?" Kim's eyes lit up with a predatory sort of glee. She turned to me. "And you didn't say nothing? Man, if I gotta go back to my house and listen to my auntie argue with the cable company all night, I'm gonna lose it." "Can we stay?" Tasha asked quietly. It was the most she'd spoken all night. She was still tucked into the corner near the hallway, her fingers nervously twisting a loose thread on her hoodie. "My house feels loud tonight. I don't want to be there." Rico looked at Rochelle. Rochelle looked at the ceiling, praying for patience. "Please," Kim begged, pouting with exaggerated drama like usual. "We'll be good. We'll even help with the dishes. Maybe." "Ma's gonna kill us," Rico muttered, though I could see he wanted the company. The house felt too big with just the three of us when the sun went down. "She's about to head out for her shift," Rochelle said, checking her watch. "If she says yes, you stay. If she says no, you're out the door the second her car pulls out the driveway. Understood?" A chorus of bet and thank you erupted. A few minutes later, Michelle, Rico, and Rochelle's mom came down the hall in her nurse's scrubs, smelling like peppermints and industrial soap. She was tired, the dark circles under her eyes deep enough to hold shadows. But she had that soft mom heart. Fine, she sighed, pointing a finger at Tyson. But if I come home and my fridge is empty, Tyson, you're paying me back in manual labor, and Rochelle is in charge. I mean it. No wandering, no trouble. Yes, ma'am, the three of them said in a practiced, perfect unison. We watched from the window as her taillights faded into the Detroit haze. The second the sound of her engine vanished, the atmosphere shifted. The grown-up air left the room, replaced by a jittery electric tension. All right, Kim said, dropping onto the floor and crossing her legs. Since Rochelle is a fun killer and won't let us play truth or dare yet, let's talk about why we're actually staying. Let's talk about the stuff people don't say out loud. You mean ghost stories? I asked, trying to sound braver than I felt. Real ones, Tyson said. We went around the circle. Kim told a story about some hitchhiker of 8 Mile that felt like something she'd read on a forum. Rico told a story about a haunted barber shop on the west side that made us laugh more than scream. But then Tasha spoke. My grandma, she started, her voice so low we had to lean in. She says that before the city tore those 3 houses down across the field, there was someone who lived in the middle one. They kept animals in the basement, not for food, for company. She said they started sounding like those animals, grunting, squealing. One night, the neighbors heard a scream that sounded like a person being put through a meat grinder. When the police came, the person who lived there was gone, but the animals were fat, real fat, and they had human hair stuck in their teeth. Silence fell over the room. The box fan clicked. Clack, clack, clack. That's just a story, Tasha, Rico said, his voice cracking slightly. Then why did the city tear the houses down? Tasha asked. Nothing grows there, Rico. Not even the weeds look right. Man, whatever, Tyson said, clapping his hands together to break the spell. I'm bored of talking. Let's do it. Truth or dare, right now. Simple stuff first to get the blood flowing. We started easy. Rico had to call his crush and hang up. He turned bright red. Kim had to do a handstand against the door for 30 seconds. Tyson had to eat a spoonful of hot sauce and mustard. We were laughing, the dread from Tasha's story beginning to recede. Then Kim turned to me and Rico. Her smile wasn't friendly anymore. It was sharp. Aunt, Rico, she said, I dare you both to go out there, walk across the field, stand on the porch of the house, count to 10, then come back. My stomach did a slow, cold roll. I looked at Rico. He looked like he wanted to vanish into the floorboards. The house? I whispered. The house, Kim reaffirmed, unless you're both just talk. The room went quiet again. The flickering streetlight outside cast a long, skeletal shadow of the window frame across the floor, pointing straight toward the field. Fine, I said, my voice sounding like it belonged to someone else. We'll do it. The air outside the front door was different from the air inside. Inside it was heavy with the smell of Rico's house, old carpet, pine sol, and the lingering scent of fried sausage. Outside the night felt hollow. It was that weird, dead silence you only get in the city when the wind dies down and the streetlights hum just a little too loud. You don't have to do this, Aunt, Rico whispered as we stepped onto the sidewalk. His voice was thin, like paper tearing. And let Kim hold this over us for the rest of the year? No, I said. though my legs felt like they were made of lead. 10 seconds, Rico. We count fast. We run back. Easy. We stepped off the concrete and into the field. The grass wasn't just overgrown. It was thick and oily, dragging against our shins. Every step felt like the ground was trying to hold on to us. As we approached the house, the light from the street lamp seemed to fail. It didn't just get darker. The light seemed to be repelled by the structure, curving around it like water around a stove. The house loomed. Up close, the rotting Victorian looked less like a building and more like a carcass. The wood was gray and peeling, like dead skin. We reached the porch. The steps groaned under our weight, a deep, wet sound like a bone snapping in slow motion. 1, I whispered. 2, Rico countered, his eyes darting toward the black void of the front window. 3, 4. At 5, the sound started. It came from right behind the front door. It wasn't a knock. It was a rhythmic, wet thud, 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 like something heavy and fleshy was being swung against the door from the inside. Then a long, rattling breath, congested, bubbling with fluid, followed by a sharp, guttural sound. Rico didn't even wait for 6. He spun around and bolted. I was right on his heels, my heart hammering so hard it felt like it was going to burst through my ribs. We scrambled back across the field, the weeds hissing against our clothes, until we burst through Rico's front door and slammed it shut, sliding the deadbolt home with a frantic click. "Whoa, whoa!" Tyson laughed, jumping back from the door. "Y'all look like you saw the devil himself." "Something was in there," Rico gasped, doubled over with his hands on his knees, his face the color of ash. "Something big. It hit the door. It sounded like an animal." Kim crossed her arms, a skeptical smirk on her face. "It was probably a stray dog or a squatter. You didn't even stay for the full 10 seconds. I was watching through the window. You hit that porch and turned tail in 5. "It wasn't a dog, Kim," I snapped, my hand still shaking. "I'm telling you, it was right there, right behind the wood." "You guys didn't do the dare right," Kim insisted, shaking her head. "A dare is a dare. If you don't finish it, it doesn't count. You're officially the biggest scrubs." "Scrubs?" Rico bristled, his fear suddenly turning into defensive anger. "We went out there. I didn't see you moving toward the door. You're sitting here acting tough behind a locked deadbolt. You're the chicken, Kim. You and Tyson and Tasha." "I ain't no chicken," Tyson growled, standing up. "I'll go right now." "Then let's go," I challenged, the adrenaline making me reckless. "Since you're so brave, Tyson, let's all go. If it's just a squatter, then 6 of us can handle it." "No," Rochelle said firmly, standing up from the couch. "Nobody is going back out there. Ma said stay inside." "Oh, come on, Ro," Kim teased. "You scared too? The big, bad babysitter is afraid of an empty house?" "I'm not afraid." Rochelle narrowed her eyes. "I'm being smart." "You're being a scrub," Rico chimed in, emboldened by my side. "A total scrub. Just admit you're terrified of a pile of old wood." The bickering went on for 10 minutes, the kind of circular, ego-driven arguing that only happens when you're trying to prove you aren't the weakest link. Eventually, the pressure shifted. The room felt smaller, the air tighter. Maybe it was the peer pressure, or maybe it was something pulling at us. But the decision was made. "Fine," Rochelle snapped, grabbing her heavy flashlight from the kitchen drawer. 3 minutes. We go in, we stand in the foyer, we come back. That's it. Then we lock the door for the rest of the weekend, and I don't want to hear another word about that house. We walked out as a group this time, the 6 of us, shoulder to shoulder. As we crossed the field, the temperature dropped. Not a breeze, just a sudden, bone-deep chill. Tasha stopped at the edge of the dirt. "I don't like this," she whispered, her eyes fixed on the upper windows. "The house? It looks different from here. Like, it's taller." "It's just the angle, Tasha. Stay close," Tyson said, though he was gripping her arm tighter than he needed to. As we stepped onto the porch, the smell hit us. It was a thick scent of old grease and copper. It smelled like a butcher shop that had been left in the sun. Rochelle pushed the front door. It didn't creak. It swung open silently, as if the hinges had been freshly oiled. The foyer was a cavern of shadows. Rochelle's flashlight beam cut through the dark, revealing peeling wallpaper and a floor covered in a thick layer of gray dust. Except for the center of the room, the dust there had been swept away, leaving a clean, circular patch. "See?" Kim whispered, her voice wavering despite her bravado. "Nothing here, just an old creak." It came from above us. A slow, heavy footstep, then another. Thud, thud, thud. "Someone's upstairs," Tyson whispered, his voice dropping an octave. I looked toward the back of the house. In the kitchen I saw a shadow move. Not a person-shaped shadow. It was too wide, too low to the ground. It darted across the doorway and vanished. "Did you see that?" I asked, my throat dry. "See what?" Rico asked, but he was staring at the hallway mirror. "Aunt, look at the mirror." The mirror was cracked, a jagged line splitting it in half. In the reflection, the hallway behind us wasn't empty. There were shapes, pale, blurred faces peeling out from the darkness of the dining room. But when I turned around, there was nothing but shadows. "I feel sick," Tasha said, her breath hitching. "The walls, they're vibrating." She was right. I put my hand against the foyer wall. It wasn't solid. It felt like it was pulsing. A slow, rhythmic throb that matched the heavy footsteps upstairs. Suddenly, the silence was shattered. Crash. A sound like 1,000 panes of glass shattering exploded from the basement. It was followed by a horrific, metallic screech, the sound of iron being twisted and torn apart. The entire house shuddered, the floorboards bucking under our feet. "Get out!" Tyson screamed. We didn't need to be told twice. We scrambled for the door, tumbling over each other in a blind panic. We didn't stop until we were back in Rico's living room, gasping for air, the sound of that basement crash still ringing in our ears like a physical bruise. We slammed the door and locked it, but as I looked at the wood of the door, I realized something. The thudding from earlier hadn't stopped. It was just quieter now. The living room felt different when we burst back in. It wasn't just that we were spooked. The space itself felt like it had been violated. The warmth was gone, replaced by a damp, stagnant chill that seemed to seep out of the vents. "Did you hear that? That wasn't no squatter," Rico yelled, his chest heaving. "That sound in the basement, that was metal, like someone was ripping the furnace out of the floor." Tyson slammed his back against the front door, his eyes wide. "I'm telling y'all, I saw something in the kitchen. It was too big to be a dog. It was like gray and slick." "Y'all are just tripping now," Kim snapped, though her hands were shoved deep into her pockets to hide the shaking. "Fear makes you see stuff. Adrenaline, man. We went in, we got scared, we ran. That's it. It's over." "It's not over," Tasha whispered, sitting on the very edge of the couch. "I can still feel it, like a ringing in my ears." We spent the next hour bickering, trying to rationalize the irrational. Rochelle was pacing, her face set in a hard mask of big sister responsibility. "Everyone just calm down," she commanded. "It's 11:30. We're inside. The door is locked. We are fine." She walked over to the coffee table where she'd left her schoolwork. She paused, her brow furrowed. "Wait, where's my trig book?" "You probably left it in the kitchen," I said. "No, Aunt, I left it right here, on top of my notebook." The book was gone, not just moved. Gone. We checked under the couch, the kitchen table, even the bathroom. Nothing. It was like the house had simply swallowed it. Beep, beep, beep. We all jumped. The sound was coming from the kitchen. We scrambled in to find the microwave running. The timer was counting down from 99.99, and the turntable was spinning empty. "Who touched the microwave?" Rochelle demanded. "Nobody's been in here," Rico shouted, hitting the cancel button. The machine died, but the smell of burnt popcorn and old copper, the same smell from the house, wafted out of the vents. A minute later, Kim went to the bathroom to splash water on her face. We were all still in the kitchen when we heard the scream. It wasn't a scary movie scream. It was a genuine, throat-tearing shriek of pure terror. We found her collapsed on the bathroom floor, pointing at the vanity mirror. "His face," she sobbed, clutching Rochelle's waist. "Tyson, I looked in the mirror, and Tyson was standing behind me, but he didn't have no eyes, just black holes and hair, long black hair coming out of his mouth." Tyson looked at his own reflection. He looked normal, terrified, but normal. "I'm right here, Kim. I didn't even leave the hallway. It's the house," Tasha said, her voice dead and flat. By 1 a.m., we tried to force a sense of normalcy. Rico popped a VHS of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles into the player. "Just watch the movie," he muttered. "Focus on the turtles. Focus on New York, not Detroit." We huddled together on the floor and the couch. For 20 minutes it worked. Michelangelo was making jokes about pizza, and we were actually starting to breathe again. Then the screen glitched. High voltage static tore across the image, turning the green of the turtles into a sickly, bruised purple. The audio slowed down, the voices dropping into a deep, demonic growl. The scene shifted. It wasn't New York anymore. It was a grainy, black and white shot of a basement. Rico's basement. I saw the stairs. The ones we had walked past 100 times. A figure was huddled in the corner, wrapped in a tattered floral dress. She was hunched over something, her back to the camera. Then she turned her head. It wasn't a face. It was a snout. Wet, pink, and twitching. The screen snapped back to the movie. Leonardo was swinging his katanas. Did y'all see that?" I asked, my voice trembling. "See what?" Tyson asked, though he was gripping the armrest so hard his knuckles were white. "It was just a tracking error. Old tape, Aunt. Just an old tape." Around 2:30 a.m., screams started outside. They were distant at first, echoing down the block. It sounded like someone being chased, or maybe a drunk losing their mind. "Just crackheads," Rico whispered, though he didn't sound convinced. "Block is always loud on Fridays." But the screams didn't move past the house. They stayed right outside the window, and then they changed. They didn't sound like screams anymore. They sounded like someone trying to imitate a human voice. A high, mocking, "Help me, please help me," that ended in a wet, rhythmic snorting. We decided to sleep in a pack in the living room, lights on, TV on mute. Sleep was a joke. I'd drift off for 10 minutes only to wake up because I felt something brushing against my hair. I'd look up and see a shape, a tall, hunched shadow standing by the coat rack. But when I rubbed my eyes, it was just the coats. "Aunt?" Rico whispered from the floor beside me. "Did you say my name?" "No, man." "Someone whispered, 'Rico,' right in my ear," he said, his voice shaking. "It sounded like my mom, but wrong, like she was talking through water." At 4 a.m., every light in the house, the lamps, the overheads, the porch light, snapped on at once. The glare was blinding. We all bolted upright, shielding our eyes. A second later, they all died. Complete, crushing darkness. "Rochelle?" I cried out. "I'm here," she gasped. "Nobody move." Then came the sound. Jiggle, jiggle, scrape. Someone was at the front door, not knocking. They were trying the handle, slow, deliberate. Then the sound of a key, or something like a key, scraping against the lock. Scritch, scritch, scritch. Tyson grabbed a baseball bat from the corner and crept toward the door, his breath shaky. He looked through the peephole. He stayed there for a long time, frozen. "Tyson?" I whispered. "Who is it?" He backed away from the door, his face completely bloodless. "Nobody," he whispered. "There's nobody on the porch, but the handle is still turning." We watched as the brass knob twisted all the way to the left, then all the way to the right, over and over, for 20 minutes. None of us slept after that. We sat in the dark listening to the house breathe. When the first gray light of Saturday morning finally bled through the curtains, we weren't relieved. We were exhausted, frayed and haunted. We looked at each other in the morning light. We looked like we'd aged 10 years. Tasha was staring at the wall, her eyes unfocused. "It's Saturday," I said, trying to find a spark of hope. But as I looked at the front door, I saw something that made my heart stop. On the inside of the door, right above the deadbolt, were 3 deep, vertical gouges in the wood, like claws had been trying to get out. "Look at the door," I whispered, my voice sounding like I'd swallowed gravel. The others crowded around. Rico reached out, his fingers hovering just inches from the 3 deep, jagged gouges in the wood. They weren't just scratches. The wood had been splintered and peeled back as if something with incredible strength, and no patience, had been raking at the door from the inside. "That wasn't there when Ma left," Rochelle said, her voice trembling. "I cleaned this door yesterday. I would have seen that." "Maybe it's the wood rotting," Kim suggested, though she sounded like she was trying to convince herself. "Wood doesn't rot into claw marks, Kim," Tyson snapped. He rubbed his eyes, his face etched with exhaustion. "Man, I didn't sleep for more than 20 minutes. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard that sound. Like it was right under the floorboards." "I'm going home," Tasha said suddenly. She was standing by the window, her arms wrapped so tightly around herself, it looked like she was trying to disappear. "I can't stay here." "Tasha, wait," Rochelle said, stepping toward her. "You can't leave me here with just the boys all weekend. My mom won't be back until Monday morning. You know, on Saturdays and Sundays, she goes to her man's house after work. Please stay." "Yeah, girl," Kim added, throwing a subtle, playful look my way, then felt completely out of place given the gouges on the door. "I didn't say I was going home. If Aunt is staying, I'm staying. We just need to reset, get some fresh air, get away from this block for a minute." Tyson nodded, leaning his head against the wall. "If Aunt is in, I'm in. Rico's mom already said it was cool. We just need to move around. I feel like I'm stagnant in here." Tasha looked at all of us, her gaze lingering on the field outside. She sighed, A long, defeated sound. Fine, I'll stay, but I need to get clothes. And my toothbrush. I can't stay in these clothes for 2 more days. Me too, Kim and Tyson said in unison. I'm starving, Rico groaned, his stomach letting out a loud growl. Let's hit the Coney Island down the street for breakfast. I got some money left. I can pay. We can pay, I added. Then we'll hit Tasha's house first since she's the closest. Then the rest of y'all. Wait, Rochelle said, ever the general. Before we go anywhere, we are not leaving this house a mess. Put the blankets away, stack the pillows, and someone empty the trash. If Ma comes home to a wreck, we're all dead, ghost or no ghost. We spent the next half hour in a blur of forced productivity. It felt good to move, to do something normal like folding a quilt, even if I kept glancing at the hallway mirror every time I passed it. By 9 a.m., the sun was trying its best to pierce through the Detroit haze, and we stepped out onto Faircrest. The walk to the Coney Island was quiet. We passed the field, and I swear the house looked smaller in the daylight, shabbier, less imposing. It was just a ruin, or so I wanted to believe. Inside the Coney Island, the smell of grease and grilled onions usually made my mouth water. Today it made me nauseous. We sat in a red vinyl booth that had seen better decades. A waitress with a tired bun and a name tag that said Doris walked over, her notepad ready. "What can I get you kids?" she asked, her voice raspy from years of cigarettes. "Breakfast platter, extra bacon," Tyson said. Doris scribbled it down. "1 plate of raw dog, hold the hair," she muttered. Tyson froze. "Wait, what did you say?" Doris looked up, blinking. "I said 1 breakfast platter, extra bacon. You okay, sugar? You look like you've seen a ghost." Tyson swallowed hard. Yeah, my bad. I misheard you." I looked over at the large mirror behind the counter. For a split second, I saw a reflection of our booth. But instead of the 6 of us, the booth was packed with shadows. Dark, upright shapes with no features. I blinked and it was just us again. Kim was checking her hair, and Rico was picking at a loose thread on the table. Suddenly the bell above the door chimed. I looked toward the entrance. A tall figure in a tattered floral dress stepped inside, its head ducked low. I felt a jolt of ice water hit my veins. Rochelle and Rico both jerked their heads towards the door at the same time, but when the door finished swinging shut, there was no one there. The entryway was empty. The bell was still vibrating. "Did you see?" Rico started. "Yeah," I whispered. "See what?" Kim asked, looking between us. "Nobody came in." "Never mind," Rochelle said, though she was gripping her fork so hard her knuckles were white. "Let's just eat and get out of here." After breakfast, we started the walk toward Tasha's house. We had to cut through the edge of the local park. Usually on a Saturday morning, you'd see kids on the swings or guys playing basketball, but the park was empty. As we walked past the line of trees, I saw a shape in the distance. It was standing near the slide. It looked like a person, but the proportions were all wrong. The arms were too long, reaching down past its knees. It was hunched over, moving in a strange, jerky rhythm. "Look," I pointed. Tyson and Rico looked. The shape was there for a heartbeat, a dark blot against the rusted playground equipment. Then we all blinked and it was gone. Just the empty swing set, swaying slightly in a wind we couldn't feel. "We need to hurry," Tasha whispered, her pace quickening. "I don't want to be out here. I don't want to be anywhere." We kept moving, the sun feeling cold on our skin instead of giving off its normal warmth. A few hours have passed. since we went with Kim and them to get their stuff. On the way back, we stopped at Wizard's Arcade. The arcade was a neon-soaked cathedral of bleeps, bloops, and the heavy scent of ozone and floor wax. For a while, the 90s vibe of the place actually worked. We dropped our bags of clothes by the prize counter and dove into the rows of cabinets. "Aunt, if you pick Ryu one more time, I'm unplugging the machine," Rico shouted over the roar of Marvel vs. Capcom. "You're trash with anybody else." "I'm a specialist, Rico. There's a difference," I shot back, slamming the buttons. "And don't talk to me about trash when you still can't beat the first boss in Metal Slug without using 5 continues." "Yo, move over," Tyson said, looming over us with a handful of quarters. "You're both scrubs. I'll run the winner." We were laughing, trash talking like the night before was just a bad dream. Kim was dominating a Dance Dance Revolution machine, her movements sharp and confident, while Rochelle and Tasha hovered near the air hockey table. For 2 hours, we were just kids again, but the arcade was sick. Every 20 minutes, the lights would dim and the cabinets would let out a collective electric moan as the power surged. "Sorry, babies," Mrs. Love yelled from behind the counter. "City's been working on the lines all day. Transformers are acting up." Mrs. Love has been running the place as long as any of us could remember. We nodded, accepting the excuse, but the glitches started getting specific. I was playing Mortal Kombat when the screen tore. Instead of Sub-Zero, the pixels bled into a grainy image of a face. Not a face, really, but a distorted mask of pink flesh with wet, black holes where eyes should be. I jumped back, but by the time the screen flickered again, the game was normal. "Did you hear that?" Tasha asked, walking over to us. She looked pale. "I was playing Pac-Man, and when I died, the speakers didn't make the womp womp sound. It sounded like someone screaming underwater." "It's just a crowded arcade, Tasha," Tyson said, though he was staring at a Dayton, USA machine that was showing a video of an empty, dark hallway instead of a racetrack. "All these machines are old as dirt. They're bound to act weird with the power surges." Around 6:30 p.m., the biggest surge yet hit. The arcade went pitch black for 5 full seconds. In that silence, the crowded room went dead quiet. No one moved. No one spoke. Then the lights hummed back to life and I looked out the front window. The streetlights were already on. The orange glow was reflecting off the sidewalk like pools of oil. "Time to go," Rochelle said, her voice leaving no room for argument. "We gotta get back before the neighborhood gets too rowdy." On the way back, we stopped at Ray's corner store. "Alright, who's going in?" I asked. "Ray's gonna have a heart attack if all 6 of us walk in there at once. He already thinks we're a gang just because we're wearing hoodies." "I'll go," Tyson said. "I need my red Faygo and some hot fries." "I'm going too," Kim said, grabbing Tyson's arm. "I need my chocolate. Aunt, what you want?" "Get me a lemon lime Gatorade and some barbecue chips," I said. Rico and the girls gave their orders, and we watched Tyson and Kim disappear inside. The 4 of us, Rochelle, me, Tasha, and Rico, waited on the sidewalk. The streetlights above us were buzzing with a high-pitched, angry hum, flickering in a way that made our shadows dance and stretch unnaturally. "Today is just off," Tasha whispered, looking up at the sky. "It's too quiet, even for a Saturday." "It's just the power stuff," Rochelle said, though she kept looking over her shoulder toward the field. "The whole grid is probably messed up. Hey, Aunt, when we get back, we finishing that Martin marathon?" "Man, forget Martin," Rico chimed in. "We gotta watch Tales from the Hood. It's a classic." Bang. A massive metallic crash echoed from the alleyway behind the store. It sounded like an industrial dumpster had been picked up and slammed against the brick wall. We all jumped, Rico nearly tripping over his own feet. "What the hell was that?" I hissed. A second later, a scruffy-looking guy stumbled out from behind the trash bins, muttering to himself and kicking a loose can. He didn't even look at us as he wandered off down the street. "Just a crackhead," Rochelle sighed, her hand over her heart. My God, we are all on edge. Tyson and Kim kicked the door open, laughing and carrying 2 plastic bags overflowing with junk food. Kim walked straight up to me, pulling out my Gatorade. She leaned in close, giving me a smirk and a quick wink. "Here you go, Spec Ops," she teased, her eyes lingering on mine for a second longer than usual. "Don't say I never did nothing for you." We turned on to Faircrest, the bags of snacks crinkling in the quiet night, but as we got within 50 yards of the house, the atmosphere curdled. Every dog on the block started barking, not the usual mailman is here bark, but a frantic, terrified howling. It was a chorus of desperate sounds coming from backyards and porches all down the street. It felt like they were all facing the same direction. They were barking at the field. We stopped at the edge of Rico's porch. The dogs were losing their minds, their voices raw and strained. We stood there for a long beat, looking at the empty lot next door. The house wasn't very visible in the dark, just a darker shape against the black sky. "Inside," Rochelle whispered. "Now." We didn't argue. We stepped inside and locked the door, but for the first time, the locks felt like they were made of glass. The transition from the arcade's neon buzz to the suffocating quiet of the house was jarring. We put on Martin, and for a while, the slapstick comedy and the canned laughter acted like a shield. We were laughing, shoving barbecue chips into our mouths and acting like we weren't all hyper-aware of every floorboard that groaned. But Tasha? She wasn't laughing. Every few minutes her head would snap toward the window, her eyes fixed on the black void where the field began. Around 9 p.m. the house phone rang, the sharp, old-school trill making us all jump. "Hey, Ma," Rochelle said, her voice instantly shifting into responsible daughter mode. We heard the muffled, scratchy voice of Michelle on the other end. "Yeah, we're good. No, nobody's been outside. Okay, yeah, the dresser? Got it." She hung up and looked at us. Ma said we can order pizza. She left money in her room. The argument over toppings was the most normal we had felt in 48 hours. Meat lovers versus pepperoni. Thin crust versus thick. It was a beautiful, mundane distraction. By 10 p.m. the pizza guy arrived. Rochelle paid him through a cracked door, her eyes scanning the dark porch before she snatched the boxes and slammed the bolt home. We swapped over to Tales from the Hood. The irony of watching a horror movie wasn't lost on us, but it felt like we leaned into the fear. Maybe it would stop sneaking up on us. Around 10:30 p.m., the sky finally broke. A low rumble of thunder vibrated the floorboards, followed by a torrential downpour that turned the windows into blurred, weeping sheets of glass. The lightning was sudden and violent. During one particularly bright flash, the light hit the TV screen just right. I saw a reflection in the glass. Someone standing right behind the couch. A tall, hunched shape with a thick, fleshy neck. I whipped my head around. Nothing but the wall and the coat rack. I looked at Rico. He wasn't watching the movie. He was staring at the window, his face illuminated by a jagged streak of lightning. "Aunt," he whispered, "I swear I just saw a light in the house, like a candle moving past the upstairs window."